ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we got a little bit of the Hollywood squares going right now. You got me on one side, the man, the myth, the legend, Alexander the Hawk on the other side. In a few moments, we're going to be bringing a Hollywood square into this bunch of squares. We can't be square, but it's hip to be square, ladies and gentlemen. Hoo-ha! We're about to gear up into what I could consider a really good, really fun episode with Bruce Vilanch, television writer, comedy writer for the stage and screen, theater. The dude's he's done so much stuff. You know, we could have sat here for 40 years with him and talked about all the cool stuff he did. We narrowed it down to some direct hits that we know we wanted to take, pop, 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 get it going. The great Steve Joyner hooking it up like a fish, doing it beautiful. Good man. And yeah, dude, it's I was very excited to sit down with Bruce. Bruce is a gentleman that I tried to get on the cast for. It's been a little bit, and always nice, always nice. It's just we never really figure out a time. And then Steve kind of gave the magical wand of Patouche, and it goes down in BoomBastiCAST history. You know what I mean? But we're about to get into some really cool shit. You know what I mean? Comic relief, the Academy Awards. It was cool to kind of tap into the Academy Awards, the inside scoop, kind of what it is, and the performances and what goes into it. And I felt he was very open with us, and being open always leads to great discussion. You know what I mean? But hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, brother. What do you want to say? What you want to say?
Nothing much. Just that I'm so glad to have him on the show. Be nice to see what goes in behind the scenes with the Academy Awards and some of the other things that he's been involved with, like Comic Relief. I mean, I was a big fan of that when that was out.
I got the
Um,
VHS. I got like 5 or 6 of those VHS strolling. You know,
Heck yeah! So I can't wait to talk to him and find out more.
a little George Carlin talk. Had no idea we were going to get into that, but we got up into that. That's always good. AI, something else. The future is here, like nonfiction. You know what I mean? But it's a beautiful deal. I thought it was a lot of fun, and that I'm hoping that I'm gifting that I'm putting my hands together in prayer like form to say that I think everybody else out there will like this episode too. Like I said, if you don't know the name, you know the face. And if you don't know the face, you crazy. But you definitely know the body of work that the dude's been all over. You know what I mean? Which was fantastic. Another legend, a comedy legend in the building, ladies and gentlemen. I don't use that word lightly. Man's iconic. You know what I'm saying? And absolute honor and a privilege to have him on the BoomBastiCAST. And if the Hawkman got nothing else to say, well, I gotta say one thing before we pop on. I must apologize. I must apologize because throughout this interview, I did say that Alexander Hawk was not a leading man type, but it was only with the looks, man. We're talking like Ryan Gosling's, Brad Pitt's, stuff like that. The man over here has an incredible wealth of talent. I think he's one of the best actors to ever move their mouth after looking at a script of words somebody else wrote. You know what I mean? So I gotta
Thanks,
give
man.
so I gotta give kudos to the Hawkman because as I said it, I fucking felt bad saying it. I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I going with this? But Hawkman is a leading man and
Okay.
a misleading man sometimes. But it's all good in the hood, brother. But yeah, like I said, with that being said, let's dip into this episode. We had a lot of fun with this, and we hope you all enjoy it too. So, without any further ado, for the first time, welcome to the BoomBasticAST, the great, the iconic, the legendary Bruce Vilanch. Bruce, welcome to the BoomBasticAST. It's
Delighted to be here.
I know you've been wanting to do it for years.
It's been on the list. What can I tell you?
Well, I appreciate that. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
important things,
Yeah.
right? The Stormy Daniels documentary, things like that's on the list of important stuff.
Hell yeah. Well,
Take care of.
it's a pleasure to have you. You're iconic. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to be iconic.
I like it.
It helps, when you're when the plane's delayed or something.
Yeah, hell yeah. We
Step
strive.
over here, we have peanuts. It's very nice.
You know, the first time I think you ever popped on my radar, Hollywood Squares, I think was the first time that I seen you.
For
Um,
me.
it was kind of like I guess it's television. You know, you wrote for television before, but getting your face on television is really a whole new wave of fame. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've been around for 20 years, but then when you're on TV every night, 5 nights a week for 6 years, you become sort of famous in spite of yourself, and it is a whole other level. But I had good training. I had been surrounded by people who were really famous, and I saw how they behaved, and I saw how fame hit them, and I determined I was what to do, because you don't realize that when you meet somebody or deal with somebody who's very well known, they are you can be catching them on a bad day, or a bad moment even, and for that person, if they catch you and you're not nice, or they'll remember you as that for the rest of their lives. My mother, Marvin Hamlish and I worked on a bunch of shows together, and my mother went to camp with his mother, and she couldn't wait to tell him. And I was in New York doing a thing with him, and she came in to watch, and she was excited over him. And she said, I went to camp with your mother. She won't remember it. And he just kind of looked at her and said, that's nice. And he turned and walked away. And from that day forth, whenever his name would come up, she would say, that son of a bitch. How dare, I mean, never to be forgotten. So I thought there's a life lesson. It's like, don't be that person.
Yeah, always try to be nice, especially I mean when you're doing film and TV and that kind of stuff. There's so many people that watch what you do and love what you do, and sometimes they don't know how to react around you. Which I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you know you have to have a little bit of understanding that sometimes people don't know how to react with other people that they've grown up to watch and idolize.
That's exactly right. And they feel as if they know you, because especially television, because
Yeah.
television, as McLuhan wrote, is a cool medium, and you come into people's homes. Uh, if they don't go to you. They don't go sit in the theater or in a club or something. I mean, they're sitting on the couch scratching their balls, and you're on TV. And you're a part
Yeah.
of their life, and that's how they regard you. So it is a whole different dynamic.
Yeah.
So you brought up the mother. Where did you were a comedian first before anything before you?
An actor. I was a child actor. I would
Oh,
make
really?
faces in the mirror, and my parents were very smart and very enabling, and they realized I was happy when I was doing that. I was an only child, and I was happy when I was doing that. And I wasn't an athletic kid, so I didn't have a lot of acceptance. I had a group of other nerds that I hung out with. Uh, and so they liked that I was happy doing this, so they encouraged it. So I was a child actor. I was never a child star, or we'd be having this conversation in rehab. They don't age out well,
Yeah, best
by and
things.
large.
Yeah,
So that was the first thing, and then I mean, it was my nature was comic, so it was it led into comedy, and but I was also I was heavy and I had a deep voice, and I was when I kind of transitioned, if that's the word, into older roles, I was up against people who were authentically older, because I was not a very youthful looking kid.
yeah.
I always looked like I was 40. So I wasn't getting cast. And as a result, I started writing about it. And my parents thought, well, this is great. because they said you should always do what you want, but always have a fallback. And writing would be a great fallback. You could be a journalist because newspapers will never go away. My father was a doctor, but he wasn't so technocentrically plugged in. So, so I, became a writer, and of course wrote what I knew, which was about show business, and wrote funny, and I kind of parlayed that combination into jobs at big newspapers, which led me to meeting a lot of people who needed a writer. And the first was Bette Midler, and that was about 50 years ago. And we're still at it. So it's that's basically how it happened. So I've always been straddling those worlds: acting, writing, and I added comedy to it. But I was because when I started, there was a great surge of comedians who were becoming rich.
Mhm.
And you could go out and you could do stand up and wind up with a television series like Roseanne or Jerry Seinfeld or Ray Romano, and but I didn't. I was too. This sounds so bizarre and self-serving. I was too unusual to be a club comic. I mean, I don't. My life was not relatable to a lot of people, and I didn't have anything I really had to talk about. I would talk about the news of the day, but what people really wanted to hear was your dating life and your family life and your take on other ethnic groups. And this was nothing that I was interested in getting up and talking about. So that kind of faded away. But just as well, I took my own path.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they want that certain everybody else is doing it. It doesn't mean what you were doing was wrong or bad or anything. It's just like you got to fit into a mold at that time to kind of please the audience, you know.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that I think the biggest problem with Hollywood is that they have like certain like cookie cutter kind of like idea of like who should be the leading man, who should be the leading woman, and and the fact is that normal people don't look like that, and I
Oh,
mean
exactly. That's why there's comedians, because I mean, those are like aspirational types. I mean, they, for centuries, well, now centuries, they've been going to the movies and looking at people up on the big screen who are great looking and affable, and who are Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, because
yeah,
part of them maybe want to be those people, or they just enjoy the romance of of looking at those kind of people, the fantasy, and they lose their own lives and watching those people, which they might not get such a thrill out of watching. I don't know, Kevin James and Melissa McCarthy. Although they go to laugh. Those people are they're comedians. I mean, they're comic actors. So it's it's one of those things. We all want to get away from the stereotypes, but we're all drawn to them.
yeah.
It's flipped now. Now it's kind of flipped into the favor of that. All different types of looks and body types are kind of more welcome. They're welcoming in it now, which is a beautiful thing. Like I said, Alex acts and like great actor. Maybe not quite a leading man type deal. In my
Oh,
heart,
don't tell anyone
he
that.
is. Well, look, the look. I would put him in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, yeah, like a Ryan Gosling type deal. That they still want him. I guess I don't know. I like Ryan Gosling though.
Of course they
Can't
do.
hate.
So
He's
in the
good.
competition is Ryan Reynolds, another Ryan, another
Hey,
another tall Ryan.
yeah,
See, what you have to do, you have to go up to Ryan Reynolds and like, dude, you're too pretty to be a comic. Okay, stop it.
Yeah.
Go do the pretty boy roles.
Then you get to be
Leave the comic roles for us guys.
Margot Robbie, who is gorgeous and makes a movie about the terrible burden of being gorgeous
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and plastic.
Plastique, Barbie, and everybody
Yeah.
loved it. What a crazy world. I didn't check
I, yeah, I know. I looked at it and I thought these straight people are so fucked up. They're carrying on about female domination and male domination and this and that. And I thought we resolved all of this. I thought we've moved on. I mean, I've worked for all these powerful women. I'm thinking of Mary Barra sitting at General Motors, twiddling her thumbs, going, "What is this bitch's problem?" And America Ferrera, who's terrific, but I mean, she was a star on Ugly Betty. She didn't have to do this transformation
Yeah.
to be a successful actress, and she gets to do this huge speech about how you have to be this certain form. And I thought, well, this is exactly what the movie is about. You're,
Yeah.
I mean, and you did it deliberately to yourself. You turned yourself into this other person.
Hmm.
And I just thought I found the whole thing weird. It's very well done, and I got a lot of flack for saying that in print. I thought that in the wake of the Oscars, I thought that Ryan Gosling had a harder part to play because there is no Ken. Who is Ken? And that's the whole idea of this. I'm just Ken. Well,
Mm.
how do you play that? Well, he found a way to do it that was very effective.
Yeah.
Margot had much more to work with.
Yeah.
But the actors, I think, realized that his was the more challenging role. They nominated him because actors nominate actors at the Academy. So, but I got into not deep shit, but sort of like ankle length shit,
Yeah.
because yeah, because I dared say that it wasn't the greatest movie of all time. But I think they just have to settle for their $500 billion at the box office,
It
and
was.
the grudging respect of their peers.
I believe it even got nominated, which I thought was kind of mind blowing. It got for something.
I figured it would, especially with 10. I mean, it would. I mean, people liked it. I mean, they did
Yeah.
have a good time at it, and it was skillfully done. So I'm not surprised it got nominated. I was not surprised. Look, the thing about Oscar nominations is you can be one vote away from not being nominated.
True.
I mean, the actress, the German actress from the French Picture who was nominated, Sandra Hüller, could have gotten one more vote than Robbie. It's entirely
Yeah.
possible. So a lot is made of that, and the truth is that generally a small handful of people get all the votes. The top two or three, and you can be nominated with relatively few votes. But you have to have up to a certain cutoff. You have to have so it's there's no unified thing voting. There's no
Yeah.
snub. It's kind of the luck of the draw.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know you got 23 under your belt. We're not talking inches. We're talking about Academy Awards. You know what I mean?
Well,
Writing for, well, writing for the Academy
I say
Awards, I should say.
25. I think it's
25.
I don't know because there are the ones that are credited, and then there are
Yeah.
the ones I've worked on that were in a more casual vein. In
Yeah.
other words, I didn't get health and welfare.
Yeah. So, how did that like come? I know you the Emmys, a whole bunch of different things that you got to write for. How does like that come into play from just like sitcom-y sketch stuff? I guess it leans closer to sketch, right?
Well, yeah. Well, it was what used to be called variety television, where there were shows that featured the star, and they like the Carol Burnett show, and they did sketches and stuff like that. And there were bunches of them, and cable killed it because you could see your favorite person anytime you wanted on cable, and SNL killed it because you couldn't do in the prime time what they were doing on Saturday nights at 11:30. So it kind of wiped it off the map. It has staged a comeback, but only as a competition. There's a lot of variety out there, but it's American Idol and Masked Singer, and So You Think You Can Dance, and all those things. Those are essentially variety shows, but they added the competition element, which, as we know, people love because there are winners and losers, and even better, there are judges who get to score you. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's come back. In the meantime, the people who were writing those variety shows wound up doing a lot of specials, tributes, pageants, whatever, what have you. And part of the reason that those expanded as they did was because it was so expensive to do scripted shows. I mean, a show like Friends back in the day cost $6 million a week to turn the lights on, and that was just for the 6 friends.
Yeah.
Everything else was an additional expense, and they knew they would make it back in syndication, which is when you see the show 5 nights a week, in different time slots all around the world. But to take a lesser risk was to do a tribute to Oprah Winfrey, and you would get 20 people who loved Oprah, who were big names, and it would cost you less than one episode of Friends.
Mm.
So there was a proliferation of those kinds of shows. So I was writing a lot of those kinds of shows, and I was contributing to the Oscar show a few times, and then a guy named Alan Carr, who's no longer with us, came to produce the show. He's a friend of mine, and he said, "Come and write the Oscar show." And that was in 1989, and I started doing it. It was famous for being the Rob Lowe Snow White Oscar show.
Yeah.
So it was a great catastrophe. And in fact, I have written a book about the great catastrophes I have been a part of
Yeah.
and lived. And it's called "It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time." And it will be coming out first quarter of next year. But the legendary ones that I know you want to talk about, the Star Wars Holiday Special and Brady Bunch Variety Hour and the Paul Lynde Halloween Special and
Hell yeah.
all of the. I've had a hand in so many and many Oscar shows. Although the first Oscar show was the only one I write about because that was kind of a legendary disaster.
Yeah.
Although the ratings were good, that was the funny part of it all. The ratings were good.
Well, that's all that matters, I think.
Well, yeah, I
Supposedly.
mean, this is when ratings were ratings. When
Yeah.
it was a 3-channel universe, basically. I mean, I think already there were 4 networks. I mean, for years, you had, if you didn't catch a third of the audience, you were a failure. Now, I mean, if 3 million people watch the thing, you're considered a runaway sensation. Because there's also lots of afterplay, people watching on devices a day later, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was a kind of different culture back then. I mean, the Oscars can never really, attain the ratings that they had because there aren't people watching linear television now the way there were then.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys may be cord cutters yourselves. I mean, I have linear television because I watch a lot of TV to see what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
But a lot of friends of mine, they watch on platforms and devices, and they got rid of their cable, and it's how do you measure who's watching stuff if they've all if they're not hooked up anymore?
Yeah. The Academy Awards don't seem as classy as they used to be. It's almost like it's like the MTV Movie Awards now, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, well, of course they are, pandering.
yeah.
They are, they're more modern, and they're by definition they're looser than they have to be. They lost some of their pomposity, but that's because their cultural relevance is not exactly what it used to be. Even when I started doing it, even in the heyday of Billy Crystal, it's just a little different now, and I mean, so much has happened. I mean, when somebody actually gets up and slaps somebody, I mean, you have to just sort of sit back and say, wait a minute, what are we allowing? What's happened that this kind of the discourse has changed like this? And so but on the other hand, there is a self-awareness to the show that is refreshing. I mean, the idea is that Frances McDormand said, okay, everybody sit up. This is a serious category.
Yeah.
A few years ago when she was presenting something. And it was, it's just, I guess it kind of goes with the time.
It does. It's gotten a little more lenient, I feel, in the years where, like, I remember back in the days, it'd be like, if you were a new filmmaker or a new actor, even if you had like a superb performance, like they wouldn't give it to you first time out the gate, I feel. They would make you kind of come back a couple more times and really earn it. Where nowadays, no offense to anybody winning nowadays, but it's like you could be a first-time filmmaker or a first-time actor,
Yeah,
and if it's good enough, you're gonna get it. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's not necessarily. There are a lot of people um, who have been around for a while who just weren't in things where they were noticed, and suddenly they have a part like in everything, everywhere, all over your face. The, you know, those actors had been working for a long. I mean,
For
Casey
sure.
Quantum, since he was a kid in the Indiana Jones movie, he just hadn't been working in stuff people saw,
Yeah,
and suddenly here was a role in a movie that everybody saw, and it's like they were discovering him as an adult.
true.
So, but that doesn't, I mean, it's rare. I think it's rare for somebody to come out of nowhere, but and get something like that. But obviously not impossible in some years where especially in the leading actress category at the Oscars, where there are so few performances because there are so few roles written that are of award caliber
Yeah, yeah.
that there'll be people in there going, who was she and what was she in? Although that I mean that happened this year, but for a different reason, the Academy has expanded its voting base, and it's very international now, and it's younger and much more diverse, which is why Sandra Hüller will get nominated, which is why Poor Things won so many of the technical awards,
Mm,
because that voting base was not a Hollywood centric base of artists and technicians. It was all over the world. The picture was made in Europe, and and so the voting base recognized all of that, and that never used to happen. So, as it was racking up those awards, I thought, wow, this really is proof that the Academy is not the old hidebound Academy that it was. And even though you look the last bunch of years, pictures like Parasite and 12 Years a Slave and Moonlight and Everything Everywhere, those never would have won Oscars, 15 years ago.
yeah.
But the voting base has changed,
Yeah.
much more indie than it used to be.
I wish I could we could appreciate that for sure. Yeah, I gotta check out Poor Things. I heard good things. Heard Poor Things too.
Very good. I call it Emma Scissorhands because it's a physically striking performance. It's very very smart. I
Yeah,
mean, and the character has a real arc, and she plays this character who's finding her brain literally as she grows,
yeah.
uh, and the physicality is amazing, and the intuitiveness is incredible. I mean, it's really. I mean, she deserves the award because it's quite a piece of work.
So when you write for the Academy Awards, do you have like carte blanche to kind of just be hanging out backstage too, or is it more like a writer's room thing? And
It's both. It starts in the room. It starts everything is in the writers' room, and then once you get into the theater, it divides up a little bit because it depends on who's hosting the show and how many writers are there. When someone like Jimmy hosts it, he brings his staff over from his own show.
yeah,
So there are a lot of people there, and there isn't a lot of money left over for people to write the rest of the show. So, but there's always people with the host
yeah,
who are in the wings, and generally they deploy all the writers so that if anybody goes into a panic or has a question or needs review, there's somebody on site. There's somebody in the green room. There's somebody who's sitting in the writer's office who can make changes. I mean, it's all set up so that everybody's got something to do on the night. Um, and and of course, but during rehearsals, you're there, and everybody comes in and rehearses. I mean, it's rare that somebody doesn't want to rehearse. That they Al Pacino, I think this year was probably a guy who didn't rehearse.
I think
But
that's
then,
his style. Yeah, I think that's
well, I
Al's
mean,
style.
they kind of pulled the rug out from under him. They said, "Look, we're running long," which in fact they weren't. But they said their thought was that to eliminate the list of 10 pictures again before they give the award. Of course, people love that because it's the last gasp of recognition.
Yeah.
for all those movies that don't win.
Yeah.
And also, it kind has a kind of drum roll effect, right? And the winner is, the Oscar goes to, and he was just like way too casual. He said, "Well, we're not going to do that. Just go out there and you'll say what, whatever little thing they gave him to say, and the Oscar goes too," which of course was absent theatrics and all that. And of course, the way he played it, uh, like he was kind of shambling around. People really thought, "Oh my God, it's Warren and Fay all over again. It's
Yeah.
going to be another one of these moments at the end of the show." So, and it was. And
Yeah.
I'm sure next year, whoever does it will rethink it and
Yeah.
come out with something not dissimilar, but something different.
It's there's so many like it's like an anxiety, has there ever been like a situation where one of the presenters got a little too maybe liquored up or something like that to
Oh
kind of take
yeah.
the nerve away and you guys got to deal with that type of problem?
Um, the only time I can think of really was and I like him, but it was Dennis Quaid. It was the first show, actually. Dennis Quaid and Michelle Pfeiffer, who was new and nominated for Dangerous Liaisons and was red hot. And Dennis had made a movie about Jerry Lee Lewis
Yes.
called Great Balls of Fire, and I think he had kind of campaigned and had not gotten nominated. And I believe it was before there were SAG awards, and so before there were a lot of the awards, that lead up to the Oscars now. And so he enjoyed a cocktail backstage before he came out there, and he and Michelle, it was difficult to come up with something for them to say. I forget what they were presenting, but because they're not comedians, they're you don't want to have banter, and so it was pretty straightforward, and he was kind of loose and loop and messing around with it, and she was shooting him daggers
Mhm.
because she was, like Bruno Mars describes her, white gold. She was just like suddenly icy because he was going off script, and it was an uncomfortable moment, I thought.
Yeah.
But I mean, nobody has been like wow, except Jack Palance, of course, which was legendary. That was the one that was but he was a winner. Winners, you have no control. Winners can do anything. The only control you have is playing them off, but they can do anything. But when people who have signed off on a script come on and begin farting around, um, that's just unprofessional.
Yeah.
So no, it hasn't happened that I can think of, unless there's some glaring moment that I'm forgetting. But
Now, when you said he campaigned for it, was that just like the studios kind of putting a press package
yeah,
together and him kind of
that
touring
yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was early in the day. I mean, the idea of Oscar consultants, people who are hired to create campaigns, came in a couple of years later. I'm thinking Harvey Weinstein, who started it. He never laid a hand on me, by the way. Hashtag why not me? I think he started it when he was at Miramax and made a movie about me called Get Bruce that he
Yeah.
he produced. So I think when he decided he was going to take down Jeffrey Katzenberg, who that year DreamWorks had done Saving Private Ryan, which was the favorite, and Harvey had Shakespeare in Love, and he mounted this campaign, which was like a wartime campaign, and he won,
Hmm.
and he gave birth to a whole cottage industry of people who you bring on as part of your production budget. If you have the kind of movie that you think is Oscar bait, you bring somebody on who will craft from the beginning the strategy to get you to that big night. And
Yeah.
the town is now lousy with them. I mean, they're all over the place. And also, what's happened is the town obliged by creating all these other awards, all of which I've written over the years, that lead up. They're kind of like they're all, I call it Keeneland because it's like the Keeneland Stakes is the run before the Kentucky Derby. You know, it's there's a progression of races with your horses and before you get to the Triple Crown, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what these have become. And it starts, you know, at the end of the year, before even all the pictures are released. They have to be released by the end of the year to qualify.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it makes it slow, steady, uh, beat down progression up until the Oscars. Now, my guild, the Writers Guild, is giving their awards next week or this week, a week after the Oscars. But that's because of they got stuck in the strike.
Strike. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the scheduling got gerrymandered because between COVID and the strikes, nobody knew what was going to happen when. So in a great moment of anticlimactic activity, the Writers Guild is giving their award, I think, this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, those lead up award shows, or you're dead on with that. And I always think of Mickey Rourke and The Wrestler, when I think of those like leading up to awards, because like I feel like he like won the really big one before the Oscars, but like when he did his acceptance speech, he like swore or like did something crazy, and I think that that's kind of like the quote unquote unclassiness of that. I think is
Yeah,
I kind of think that
it could have been.
costed
I've,
him the
I've,
Academy Award. Yeah.
I've often thought that the voters are watching, the Academy voters are watching the Golden Globes and they're watching the SAG Awards and all the other things that are broadcast. And when you see, I thought when Lily Gladstone won, I think the Golden Globe, had a beautiful speech,
Yeah,
uh, and I thought that gave her a leg up.
for sure.
That and of course winning SAG, and Davine Joy Randolph had impassioned speeches each time she won because she won on every one of those awards in supporting, and I'm sure that it helped. I mean, I'm just sure that it did because they watch and I mean, back in the day, I think there were people who said that's who we want to have speak on the Oscar show. She should win because she'll make a great speech, and it's good for the industry. You know, so I mean, there's always that kind of voter.
Yeah, I thought Gladstone was going to take it for with the Flowers of the Blood Moon, the Scorsese flick.
Killers of
Killers
the
of the
Flower Moon.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, that's correct.
which I love. How do you not love Scorsese, dude?
I think that, yeah, but I also think that again the voting body is different, and they went for poor things in such a big way
Mm,
that I mean Ruffalo was the only one who didn't really win, but Mark was not going to win opposite Downey.
right,
It
for
was
sure.
Downey to lose, and
Yeah,
of course he was in the big picture, so they all saw it, and they all felt, I think, the same way that this is really a remarkable achievement. And you know, his narrative isn't lost on anybody, right? You
right.
know, the guy would wake up in somebody else's bed because, at Malibu because he didn't know where he was. You know, because I mean, and his, you know, he was a nepo, not a nepo baby, but his father was an indie filmmaker. Everybody knew who he was, and so I mean, there are certain narratives that have have a real old-fashioned Hollywood appeal to them.
Yeah,
And
yep.
Lily Gladstone does too, except that you said she's probably been around for a while doing stuff, but it appeared that she was first out of the box. We never did. The mass audience didn't know her at all until the picture. But the picture did not make the mark that they were expecting that it would.
Yeah. Even Leo, I kind of got a little bit of a snub because I thought he was, some people say Leo's the same person, Leo DiCaprio. Some
Yeah.
people say he's the same character every movie, which I don't think so. I don't feel that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he had a little more, like the ticks and stuff he had in that were really good. I dug it.
Yeah, I thought he was and they say that about De Niro, you know, lately, and I
Yeah.
thought he was extraordinary in that movie. I mean, he did a whole new spin on that kind of a villain. I thought it was great. But you know, it's and Lily Gladstone's part is fairly small. I mean, she doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, and
Yeah.
it's very subtle. I thought a little undercooked myself. I mean, she's really subtle, but she has moments that are phenomenal because she's obviously very good.
Yeah.
But compared with the balls out thing that Emma was doing, you know, I can understand how people would go for that. I would.
Yeah. And Scorsese, it's like he's like probably one of the best like living director, probably, I feel. But he's
Yeah.
like he's so good that like when you watch the movies, if they're not like perfect, you get like disappointed because he's so great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Well, also that one was very self-indulgent. I
yeah,
thought you could tell that story. You didn't need to have all of that. And
yeah,
in the industry, it's like, hey, Apple spent $200 million on this movie. You know, they know they're never going to get that back. They're not in the movie business. You know, they're in the computer business.
yeah,
So, um, and it's basically to bolster up that TV arm, the platform that they've started. So there's a certain kind of resentment. It's like, oh well, you know, he can do whatever he wants, and so nobody can edit him. You know, nobody can tell him to do it any differently. And it depends on what else is out there.
true.
When it comes down to accolades,
Yeah,
you know, and there was other stuff out there that was more interesting.
yeah. I was looking for a little more crime because you know Scorsese's famous for the crime stuff. I know he dips off and does other things, but I was expecting a little more crime within that. You know, you
Yeah,
have the murders and stuff, but yeah, a little bit more of the wicked, snaky behind the scenes, killing them type stuff. But it was all good, you know. I think Quentin will actually Tarantino is calling it quits supposedly after the next film.
so
Um,
he says, yeah.
so he says, what do you think about that? You think you will, or go into miniseries, or?
You know, I don't know what motivates it. He has kids now. Maybe that's he doesn't want to be away. I don't know. I know him a little bit, but I don't know why. Maybe he just feels like he's done what he wants to do, or maybe he's just gestating and something else will come back. I mean, never say never.
Yeah. He's one of those dudes that you can tell they all love cinema, but Quentin like really loves cinema, it feels like.
Oh,
It's such a
well,
part of his
scary.
life.
I mean, when I met him, he told me what I had done. He said, "Oh, yes, you're in Mahogany, and you're in, and you were in that picture with Mastroianni, that Italian movie. Excuse me, my name is Rocco Papa. Nobody never got a release in this country. He knows it, but that's partially because he was a video clerk, right?
Yeah.
So he knew everything that came through the store. So it
Yeah.
didn't get a release, but it did get a video, a home video.
Yeah. He's
So
been,
I mean, but he is kind of like amazing. I mean,
yeah.
if he knew who I was as an actor, that is true.
Actor. Yeah.
Oh,
That's right. Haha. I know he's writing a lot, which I got. He did a further extension of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I know.
And,
I read the novel.
and
I read it.
he did like Pure Fiction or something like that. I forget the name of it, but it's kind of like just him talking about his favorite movies. And that was a great book.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually I bought that,
Yeah.
and I have. It's a coffee table kind of book that
Yeah.
when I'm having coffee, I
Yeah.
get on the table.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he'll be back, I think. Maybe a mini series. I could see him doing a mini series, those 8 hour, because he likes he's one of he loves
He
long.
does make long movies, so yeah,
Yeah.
it might appeal to him to
Yeah.
do that thing. Sure, why not?
So
Quentin Tarantino's Shogun 2.
he'll be back to film. He'll come. He'll have to. It's a marketing thing, I think. You know what I mean? But comic relief, the comedy, the comedy shows of the comic relief. How'd that all come about with like you getting into it? And refresh my memory. It was like wasn't to raise money for like six
It was,
poor countries or something?
yeah. Well, it was for the homeless. It was
Okay.
because when Reagan came in, they threw a lot of people out of mental health facilities back in 1980. And there were suddenly there were a lot of people on the street. And they were people who were not just dropouts, but they were thrown outs, and they didn't know where to go, and the government wasn't coming in with any kind of shelter and relief. So a guy named Bob Zmuda, who was
Andy Kaufman's right hand man, right?
that's right,
Yeah.
came up with the idea of doing a benefit for them, and the name Comic Relief was brilliantly obvious, and he got together all these comedians, and I got involved because there's Pat Lee and John Moffat were producing the shows, and I worked for them, and subsequently we did Hollywood Squares. And I knew everybody. Billy, Robin, and Whoopi were people who I was working with already, and they were the hosts. So I got brought in to do that kind of stuff. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was not comedy material. There was also Buzz Cohen used to write a lot of the serious pitching to get people to actually pick up the phone, because HBO very wisely took it and ran it as a special. And if you didn't have HBO, you could have HBO for that night, that time slot while it was on, because they wanted people to come to donate. And it was a roaring success. And we wound up doing, I think, 11 of them, 12 of them. It went on. The last one I think we did was not so much homeless. It was Hurricane Katrina, which kind of, knocked out a lot of New Orleans.
Yeah.
And it was New Orleans centered, and that was a while back. But eventually, people got tired of, the homeless. Unfortunately, became a situation that was not something you wanted to give money for, but something you actually wanted the government to take care of and make go away. And so the shift changed, and it was not people, and also a lot of other things began. People got more political and began putting their money where their mouth is politically. And I got involved in the AIDS movement because that was affecting my community, and so a lot of that money was going there, and a lot of the work was being done around that. So Comic Relief kind of expired almost of its own volition, but not really. But
is that some of like the higher pride moments in your career when you actually get to step behind something? You built yourself up to a place where you can actually step into something and help it and make a difference.
Yeah, sure. Very, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm happiest about, is that I was able to make a difference. I was part of that. In show business, what we can do is we can raise money to get people who are actually professional at administering things and fixing things to do it, to give them the financial cushion. And it's the old, Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, let's put on a show. Yeah. I have costumes in the barn. And so we can do that. And that's how that was at the beginning of the AIDS thing, especially when the government isn't coming across. You can shame them into coming across by saying, well, look what we did, a whole bunch of jokers, and we came up with millions of dollars. And this is your job. Why don't you come up with it?
Yeah. Exactly. Robin was always big with the homeless. I always see like the stories of how he always made sure they were, I think, part of the crew, or extras or something, and get him some money in the films.
Oh yeah, cool. Robin was very, very because Robin was a street performer in San Francisco. He used to do a whole routine about being a mime in San Francisco, and how it was like always 1 inch from death. Because you were annoying people.
Yeah. Yeah, that was.
He had bonded with a lot of street people.
That dude was like the sweetest dude ever. Horrifying the way he went out. I remember like seeing a video they released. Like one of the last things he ever did was like send this lady who had cancer like some like inspirational like keep going thing, and it's like, man, dude, it's such a crazy. I tell Hawk all the time. I love Robin Williams. Alex is like, that's his favorite person in the entire world, and it's like it's so that loss.
It was cruel. It was awful. It was. He got this Parkinson's diagnosis, and I think he went into a profound depression because he couldn't be Robin.
Yeah.
He could do the stuff he could do, and unlike Michael J. Fox, who has went full bore into Parkinson's and into fundraising and all of that, and continued to act and could do what he did. Robin was taking some kind of a drug that also gives you suicidal tendencies, because we had a condition we didn't know that existed actually, and now we all do know it existed, and so that was part of it. But it was just a triple whammy that was just so sad at the end, because God knows he didn't deserve that.
No way. That was like such a weird time because I remember like a month prior to that, I think Philip Seymour Hoffman overdosed, and it was just like people didn't see that coming at all. And then when the Robin thing, it was just like you're on the floor. You're like, what is going on? Yeah, insane.
Then everybody has their own Mishigas, as my grandmother Flossie Landau said. You just don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it's just, it's kind of like it happens like that. I love it. Somebody says two celebrities die. Who will be the third?
yeah,
And so I said, who would you like it to be? Yeah, it's like that kind of crap.
yeah.
They don't come. They don't come in threes.
No, that's a old wives' tale.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then it's something like, and then you'll bring up somebody who they've never heard of, and they'll say, "Well, that doesn't count. Why? Because you haven't heard of them."
Yeah,
I've heard of them. They're celebrities. What do you
yeah.
mean? Anyway, my favorite, not my pet peeve. I live in LA, so my pet peeve is the guy in the car in front of me. That's my pet peeve.
Hell yeah.
That's in LA. That's everyone's pet peeve. You hate the person you're driving behind, and you are always driving behind someone.
Yeah. You brought up Whoopi. I know that you were around in the time when maybe quite the first big blackface scandal, if you will, of our time with her and
I was a
Teddy
part of that,
Dancing.
and it's in the book. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, please, one of the great disasters. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, that
we all lived, but it was a great disaster. Yeah. Well, it was. She was with Ted Danson, and they were a couple, and it was already incendiary because he had left his wife, who was not well,
hmm,
and they and the idea that this couple, I mean, people are always kind of annoyed with when Whoopi was involved with high profile white guys. I mean, there's an incipient racism that goes on there, and
sure.
they were living with this every day. They were living with hate mail, and I mean, this was pre social media, or as I call it, keyboard warfare. It was before all of that, and so they were getting a brunt of it, and they had, independent of all this, decided there was to end this relationship friendly, and but they had already committed to this Friars Club roast. So they said, "Well, we'll do that, and then we'll break up, then we'll quietly, you know, break up afterwards." Not expecting it was going to cause the commotion it caused.
Yeah.
And again, I guess, I mean, we knew that blackface was not anything anybody was doing anymore, but we thought making fun of it, and in the context of the relationship, would be understood. And when we came up with the idea, it was actually Ted and Whoopi's idea, and they asked me to work on it. Um, the It was for the Friars Club, which was a private operation,
Right.
no business. And the Friars Club, these things had never been televised. A bastard version of them had been done by Dean Martin, where they did a celebrity roast, but it was all very antiseptic. It was just like what you would see on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
But the Friars Club was the kind of jokes that the same people would do that they couldn't do on the Tonight Show, and uh, and so we figured this is fine, it's protected. And of course, unbeknownst to us, the Friars decided to make it public that year. And we found out a bit late, and it was in the ballroom, and we thought, well, let's just try it. And we didn't know it was going to be that many civilians.
Mm.
And of course, the moment he came out on stage, we realized, this is suddenly terribly wrong. This is all pre-woke,
Yeah.
terribly wrong. And uh, but when you're standing out there in blackface, what do? You say, "Excuse me, I'll be right back," and you race backstage with Alboline. I mean, he was stuck. He had to do it, and it was an interesting study to see who supported them and who went after them. Montel Williams and people who had to grandstand went after them for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people got what it was, but even and the Friars Club took full page ads and everything, saying they did what we asked them to do in our traditional setting, and we were at fault.
Hmm.
And they made big contributions all over the place to Black organizations, interracial organizations, and they said it was all our fault. They we thought we failed to tell them it was not a private event at this point, which is hard to believe, but this is how things happen. I mean, especially in the pre-keyboard warfare days.
Yeah.
Now, if Princess Kate cuts a fart, it's all over the world. So it's a whole different world, Goldie.
Yeah.
So so it certainly was a learning experience. And then of course they broke up, but nobody seemed to notice at that point because they all figured, oh well, they got mad at each other. No, they didn't get mad at each other. They were it was over. It had always been over. But I do get a kick now out of now of course among many other things, blackface has absolutely uh,
No,
become
no.
out of bounds. So
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta give the Friars kudos because nowadays they would be like their idea, demonize them. We're not taking
exactly.
responsible. Yeah.
Well, then of course the Comedy Central, which had a lot more liberal standards than NBC, which ran the Dean Martin shows, has put on these roasts, and I've worked on some of them where it's much more no holds barred.
Yeah.
Than that, but then the times have changed. On Comedy Central, you also have South Park,
Sure.
and using language which you could never use on television. And now, and as a result, the networks have had to kind of step up. So if you look at SNL any week, it's just like it's a harvest of cock jokes.
Yeah. South Park, they've been going like 20 years strong and they're still as like potent and like darkly funny as they've always
Yeah,
been,
exactly. And because they really do tackle subjects with their own unique viewpoint, but the subjects that other people won't tackle. I mean, The Simpsons and Family Guy, American Dad. Well, I mean, they all touch on everything too. But there's something about South Park. There's something about uh, going after Tom Cruise and
Muhammad.
even the more recent things now. I'm trying to think. I saw a new episode where they were. I forget what something that they were doing something Trumpy, and I forget what it was.
And they're right down the middle.
But
too,
I thought this is really strong, and of course, the genius of South Park has always been out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah.
Comes this moral lesson because they all have moral lessons. That's how all shows get away with everything. It's like there's a lesson here
somewhere. I always think of the Muhammad episode where they because I think that was right around the time when like that journalist or the cartoonist rather got like killed for putting in like in like a comic strip or something like that. And they did an episode on him, but they were like trying to make Family Guy look like the bad guy that was doing it in the episode.
That's funny. Yes, I remember that. Well, any depiction of Muhammad is profane. I mean, unlike we have paintings of God, who always, to me, when I was a kid, looked like Eisenhower.
Yeah.
I mean, this sort of gray-haired, sort of familiar father figure, surrounded by angels with harps. You can't do that. Muslims don't want you to do that to Muhammad.
Yeah.
Muhammad lives in the mind and the spirit, and not. They don't want physical depictions of him. And also, of course, we all know blonde, blue-eyed Jesus.
Yes.
Who, of course, was anything but blonde and blue-eyed.
Yeah.
Who probably looked a lot more like Ray Romano.
Yeah. Were you involved with the writing of the Cat's Eye song for the Stephen King film?
I did. I wrote the lyric. Yes. Yes. Well, that was a product of my relationship with Jacques Morali, who created the Village People, and it came out of writing the first draft of "Can't Stop the Music," which is also in the book. Notable disasters. And then after I left after the first draft of Can't Stop the Music, but this is all in the book. It was dragged back in periodically. But Jacques and I maintained this relationship, and we wrote songs together. well, he was a heavy disco. He was Village People, the Ritchie family. It was a heavy disco period,
Yeah.
And and so he got this gig writing the theme song for Cat's Eye, which was ridiculous. And it was one of those songs that was um, over the final credits.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the picture. I mean, we were singing about a girl who had a look. She had her cat's eyes.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like when Bowie wrote Cat People,
Right.
you know, which was kind of like the movie Putting Out Fires with Gasoline, which is a line that I love.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, it wasn't even that. And I'm trying to think, that's at a certain point, the Academy, because a lot of these songs get written because they want to win an Oscar for the song. And the Academy had changed it so that the song had to be in the body of the movie. So it had to actually have something to do with what was going on in the movie. It couldn't just be tacked on at the end of the thing.
Hmm.
And it's always been like, well, exactly what does Skyfall have to do with Skyfall, with
Right.
what's happening to James Bond? You know, here's Adele warping away about something, and what does that have to do with James Bond? No one puts too fine a point on it, but if you tack it on to the end of the movie, that when they can say, no, we can't do that. But I think that's where Cat's Eye wound up. The interesting part of that is my friends had to sit through the entire film to get to hear the song in, blasto stereo,
Yeah.
including me. I mean, we went to the movies because I wanted to hear it through speakers and stuff.
Yeah. It's a fun film. I like it. You know. We
It's not bad. I think the Gail Gail Honeycutt. I can never. I forget who's in it actually, but her name is always a great joke. So what can I say?
It's they have Smokers Inc. where they do with James Woods learning having the mafia makes him quit smoking. Classics, classic.
Right.
Now let's go to the stage a little more. Some theater. The Hairspray. You were part of Hairspray. What it was
I
on?
did, yes, I did for 2 years
Yeah.
for 778 performances. I did a year on the road and then a year on Broadway. And I was in Boston. We played the Colonial, the legendary Colonial Theater.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, it's a great show. I mean, even if you don't feel like working, the minute you feel the audience from the very beginning, from the first note,
Yeah.
you feel them, they're excited and they're there to party, and so it kind of brings you up. So it was great. And of course, she she starts off being this fat slob, and by the end of the show, she's glamorous. So every time you come off stage, the squad jumps you and makes some kind of little transformation, different wig, different shoes, different dress, whatever. So your only moment of serenity is when you're actually on stage
Yeah.
and you're acting. So because when you come off stage, suddenly it's like you're back at the carnival. So it's a great part to do because you're yearning to get back on stage just because people will stop touching you. It's just so much fun. It was so much fun. It was really
How involved was John Waters in that?
well. John, he I think he was involved in the development somewhat, but I was not around for that. I came in, he'd been running on Broadway for 2 years, and I came in to do the first national tour and then went to Broadway, by which time John was kind of like the pater familias. He would come in to see every new character change, every new actor, and he was, of course, a very valuable PR tool, which he loved doing, because in fact, the last movie he made so far was he shot in Baltimore when we opened the tour in 2004. It was A Dirty
Dirty
Shame,
Shame. Yeah.
and he was shooting it then. And Johnny Knoxville and Tracy Ullman all came to see the show when we were doing it, and he didn't make a movie after that because they made a movie of. There were several different things. There were many different projects that didn't happen, but it made him laugh. He told me that when they made the Hairspray musical with Travolta, he said they had to shoot it in Toronto because Baltimore was too expensive. He said, I made 17 pictures here for $1.98 a piece. Now they're telling me it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway, I understand he's now got a movie.
Oh,
He,
really?
he wrote a novel, which as I read, I thought to myself, this is a screenplay. And he has novelized it. And sure enough, he's making a movie of it.
Was it the hitchhiking book? The book
No,
where he
I can't think of the title, but it's it's totally John Waters.
Hell
It
yeah.
is about a cult of people who live on trampolines.
Nice.
They're bouncers on trampolines, and there's the central characters are two people who are luggage carousel thieves.
Yeah.
They go into airports and they quietly steal bags off of the carousel and pretend they're theirs.
Yeah.
And all of these worlds intersect, and in exactly the way you would expect the John Waters thing to do. And it's got a guy who is in a car accident and discovers his penis can talk to him. It was a novel, and I can't think of the name of it, but something offensive or something in the title. I can't think of the name of it, but it screams John Waters, and I can't wait to see this movie. I'd love to be in it, but I'm no good on a trampoline. So
there's other cameos in there for you.
I could be the talking penis, I guess. I mean,
That would be great. I would love to see that. Yeah. You know,
right.
John Waters, man, I love John Waters so much. He's so funny, and he's super talented dude with the books, the films. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for the last 20 years, he's cultivated his brand, and part of it, he said to me, is some years ago, he said, "What can I do? They've all co-opted what I do." He said, "How am I outrageous with these?" You know, with George Carlin used to say the same thing to me. He said, I go to hear these comics, and it's like, yeah, I'm doing the 7 words you can't say on TV, and they're doing all 7 double time. He said, it's like, how do I come up with stuff that's going to outrage out people? And he did manage to find a way.
Yeah.
But he said, if I can tell you that, he said, I think I found a way to do it. And so I went to see him at the college, and he came out roaring ovation, and he says, I don't think there's enough said about pussy farts.
Yes. Yeah.
So I thought, okay, you win. You have found a way.
One of the best ever, man. I would love to hear like Carlin be able to do a new stand-up in the climate of today, just like Bill Hicks. Like I would love to hear what Bill Hicks would have to say about this current.
But there's a deep fake Carlin that I know, which is terrible. I mean, it's actually. I mean, I think that SAG is using it as part of their argument.
Really?
That somebody has actually put this together, and the Carlin, his family, is actually saying, well, we're not getting anything off of this, and it's all him, really.
Yeah.
And so it addresses that huge issue, which is really, I mean, really, it's the elephant in the room. It's just there's nothing bigger than that.
And I feel like he would be totally against that if he had a choice. You know what I mean?
Anti-art. It's just
yeah.
It's like everything else with deep fake, with AI. It's what's fed into the machine, and it uses it to create something else. It doesn't create of its own. It does ancillary creation. It's been I guess the genius of it is it can put things together and make it seem like it's new. But in fact, it only knows what you've told it.
Yeah. Well, I'm super happy to hear John Waters has a new flick too, because I love John Waters, and he's a dude who likes South Park. The dark humor, and he's always, to go back to like A Dirty Shame. Like I remember there was a little chunk between that and other films, and I was, even as a fan, I was like, I wonder if he's still gonna have it. And he fucking does, dude. He does. He's that wacky, super dark comedy is fucking. He's the master of it. If you see him, tell him we said that. Nobody. There might be a lot of people copying him, but nobody does it as good as him. You know what I mean?
It's true.
I'm glad to see that he's got a new flick coming. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I have to step away.
That's cool. This was a fantastic voyage, like the Coolio song. And thank you very much, man. Thank you very much for spending your time with us.
Fabulous. Coolio used to be on Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah. It was like, it was like Meeting of the Planets.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Bruce. This was
Thank you.
an honor
Great
and a
to meet you.
privilege. Have a good
Thank
day
you.
over there.
Take care. Have fun.
Too. Bye-bye.
Okay.
And ladies and gentlemen, the great Bruce Vilanch in the building. That was a great, and that was a good times, man. It was a lot of fun. And I remember as far back as I can remember that gentleman being in my entertainment spectrum. You know what I mean? Super funny dude. Been through we hit the tip of the iceberg with all the cool stuff he does, you know what I mean? But we can't keep him here for years and years and years. That's just not right. We're very appreciative of the time that we get with these folks like Bruce, and it's just really cool to be able to sit down, hear some stories, get to know the man, put like a real personality to the face of the man, you know what I mean? I should have got red glasses, but I didn't want to upset the world, dude. I didn't want to show disrespect, but I love the red glasses. And believe it or not, I do have a pair of red glasses around here floating around, which are in complete tribute to the man, the myth, the legend himself. But Alex, what do you think, Bubba?
Hey, I had a lot of fun listening to everything that he said. I mean, unfortunately, we didn't hit on, but I mean, he also co-wrote the infamous
Yes.
Star Wars holiday special, which
Yeah.
you might be able to find on YouTube or somewhere out there.
I think they actually made an official release of it in the last couple of years because people have been begging for it forever. It's one of those lost gems, you know, and one of those people would have them on VHSs they taped off of the TV type stuff. That was like the holy grail. So I think they did actually re-release it somewhere, like official release. Yeah.
Well, what's funny is that you had the stories of George Lucas trying really hard to find all copies and destroy it. But yeah, it was great talking to Bruce. Hearing about being involved with the Oscars, with all the different the comic relief, and it's great when we're able to talk to people that put their money where their mouth is. He's out there, he's helping people, he's trying to push things forward, and I like it.
I like it. I like it a lot. You know what I mean? So, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you all out there liked it a lot. Go check out Bruce wherever you can get him, Bruce Vilanch. Maybe we'll put some links in the description. Know what I mean? But
Heck yeah.
guy's iconic. Love him. Great dude. And with that being said, we love all y'all out there too. We hope you love us back. Come on. If you got love, I hit the Patreon, I guess. Nah, we appreciate y'all just tuning in, and it's all good in the hood. Much love to everybody listening, and much love to Bruce, man. He was really cool shit, and I dig that. It's cool. One of my favorite. We've yet to stumble into somebody that was, not cool, which is a blessing because every one of these days we're gonna. But not today, my friends, not today. So if you enjoyed this, go check out more episodes wherever you heard it or watched it. And we'll catch y'all on the next episode of the BoomBasticCAST.
Peace.
Peace.